We've all become quite aware of the consequences of 9/11 for the Arab and Islamic world. Iraq's been reduced to smithereens. Afghanistan's been reduced to smithereens. Like a beehive that's been swatted with a bat, the Islamic world is now very, very agitated at what the U.S. and Israel is up to. It's a terrible situation. The clash of civilizations that was predicted by Samuel P. Huntington back in 1993 has become a reality. I'm wondering, what was in the mind of Osama bin Laden? Assuming that he did play some role in orchestrating and facilitating via the ISI of Pakistan these hijackings, if he in any way had any loyalty to the Islamic religion to back his various fatwas and various decrees against the United States, I've never been able to understand what is going through, this is the question, what must have been going through Osama bin Laden's head to conduct these attacks knowing that the Islamic world for the next generation, two, maybe longer, would endure the most incredible assault by the United States. I can't understand what his thinking must have been.
Nick,
I have to ask the question back at you, which is, which Osama are we talking about? Are we talking about the one in the interviews with the Pakistani press? Are we talking about the one in which video he always looks different? There's a big fat one who confessed directly to 9/11, although the translation turned out to be false. Then you have all these audio statements that were supposedly released by him since September 11th. Which one is real and which one is not? If you take a look at the actual record of what's there, it's all in conflict, especially since September 11th.
Just to add, as an American Muslim and as an assistant imam, the whole militant Islamic network and their ideology has been disavowed by almost every single Islamic authority that I've read. That's the first thing. That never makes it to the New York Times, nor to the Post, nor wherever. The closest it got was, I think, page 6 on September 13th, when the world's Islamic legal scholars condemned, including the Taliban, as John Judge says, ironically enough, condemned the attack on the World Trade Center. So he is seen as a rogue figure in the Islamic world, and I, as a Muslim, don't even know who he is. Okay, I don't know who he's working for. I don't know if there's one Osama bin Laden, and there's precedent for me to think that way based on the history of covert operations and false flag operations. So the question is unanswerable because you're assuming that Osama bin Laden is a Muslim, and I have no valid evidence to suggest that he is. A beard and a robe and chanting Allahu Akbar does not make you a Muslim.
Yeah, my name is Christopher Bolin with American Free Press, and I have two questions about the legality. I think that the criminal destruction of evidence, when a company named AMEC, a British company, Assets Management and Engineering Consultancy, was responsible for the renovation of the Pentagon and the cleanup of the Pentagon, the same company was responsible for the cleanup of the World Trade Center sites. And with three other companies, two of them both foreign, AMEC was responsible for the largest criminal destruction of destruction of evidence from a crime site in history. Now, the World Trade Centers were a site of a horrendous mass murder, and the steel from the building should have been preserved and tested, for example, for explosions. Now, wouldn't destruction of evidence and AMEC's role in the destruction of that evidence, wouldn't that be a venue for litigation? And another minor question.
The answer is yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And it's part of a conspiracy. Conspiracy is a very, very broad concept, and anybody who is involved in knowingly promoting the larger conspiracy, which means that what happened in Washington and Pennsylvania also can come into the jurisdiction of the New Yorkers.
And the other thing is about the way that 800 people or so were trapped in the upper parts of the tower, and the doors to the attic were locked. Back in the days of, for example, the Iroquois theater fire, when escape doors are locked, I think there could have easily
Criminal
been some
negligence.
helicopters could have assisted. A helicopter could have landed and ferried hundreds of people away from there before they died or had to jump.
Wouldn't the release of the Reagan transcripts shed a lot of light on these issues? And for that matter, also the release of the Giuliani transcripts that he stole out of office and put in storage?
I guess the answer is yes.
It just seems to me that that's been a lost issue, and it might be another avenue of attack on, in terms of what you're talking about.
When you're saying Reagan transcripts,
the Reagan administration transcripts that were supposed to be released in 2000 after the 12-year period.
Right, John. I think yes, exactly. He's referring to the White House records, which the Bush has been in violation. The Bush administration, has been in violation of the law since coming to office because these transcripts, not the transcripts, but the White House documents under the Presidential Records Act have to be released after 12 years. Okay, and that was the year 2000 already, so I guess the Clinton administration was in no rush, and then the Bush administration took over, and 3 years later, 4 years almost, they still have not released the White House records from the Reagan era.
Thank you.
And that's a violation of the law.
Well, there's a tremendous push by the Bush administration to go backwards in terms of openness. They have teams in the National Archives reclassifying formerly declassified documents. The Justice Department has said that if anyone brings a suit for a Freedom of Information Act file, that the full weight of the Justice Department will be brought to bear on behalf of the agency being sued. An executive order that Bush put into power gave him control over the previous two administrations' records. And in general, they have been reluctant to release anything, legal or not, from past or current administrations. But certainly any of these documents created by people that we're electing and paying to be in power and that are supposedly representing us in a democratic government belong to us, not to them.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Yes, I'm concerned with the Dick Cheney and Lynn Cheney in the secret bunker on 9/11 perhaps running things, and how 9/11 was most definitely a pretext for Iraq in gaining public support. I think we all agree with that. I'm concerned now with the Lynn Cheney connection with AIPAC, Israel, Larry Franklin, the Iran situation right now, and us potentially going into Iran, and what might be the possible pretext for our invading Iran, and is that right on the horizon, and should we be talking a little bit about that too, since it might be happening imminently?
Your question is about the deep political relationship between the Cheneys and
AIPAC
and
Israel
our
and Larry
going into
Franklin.
Iran.
Yeah.
John?
Well, I think one aspect of deep politics that hasn't been looked at, a lot of people say this comes from oil, but I think even deeper than the oil is how the oil is financed and based. And I think it's important to know that first Iran and then Iraq and then Venezuela, where we've been trying to effect a coup recently, switched over on their oil production and sale from the American dollar to the euro. And I think that's part of what's precipitated them as targets because it does threaten the entire economic system here if oil, and they were urging OPEC countries in general to go to the euro. And there's a lot of agendas driving things. I mean, and many times U.S. hegemony and global relations are in relation to some of the more corrupt or backward regimes abroad. And there's certainly times when the U.S. and Israeli government agendas push together for things. I'm not of the opinion that Israel is the tail wagging the American dog, but I do believe that there are a lot of people in the current Bush administration with close ties to and loyalties to the Israeli agenda and the part of the U.S. global agenda that has to do with that region. Most of the command structure was AWOL on 9/11, which by de facto left Cheney calling the shots. Rumsfeld sat in his office, he says, until the Pentagon was hit. Dick Myers is not interrupted in a meeting with Max Cleland until after the plane is there. The normal head of the White House Office of Preparedness in this emergency bunker is down in Florida with Bush. Bush appears to me to be essentially out of the loop, even to the point that he reported that his secure line communication line, which also means his command line to the defense of the country, went dead for a period of 2 hours on Air Force One, and he was forced to call with payphones.
Thank you.
That hasn't been investigated yet, but I don't think that goes down without somebody knowing why it's happening.
Thank you.
Commissioner McIlvaine would also like to make a comment.
In connecting the dots, the AIPAC, Pearl, Wolfowitz, and one thing that hasn't been mentioned today is the defense paper, Building American Defenses in 2000. All the same people are connected with these. And, of course, in the paper that came out in 2000 by PNAC, they mentioned the axis of evil. So Iran was in that. And so Iran's been a part of the big picture, for the last, since the early 90s, but specifically with rebuilding American defenses. And the same people are involved with AIPAC also. So it's just all these dots are connected to that one direction.
Hello. I'd like to thank the 9/11 Citizens Commission for standing with us, by us, and for us. And 9/11 Truth and the Citizens Watch. Thank you, all of you, for your strength that you give us.
The answer to your question that you asked me was 2 months, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
2 months was when the fire went out.
Yes.
I was
At
wondering
Ground
what
Zero.
the date was the fire went out at Ground Zero. 2 months it took.
No, 4 months.
I asked Elizabeth Orkin. She said 2 months.
No, they did not.
Okay.
They were not.
Okay, months. Lasted a long time.
I wanted the date, though. But anyway, I want to thank also Truth for a Change, which is a show that Joe Friendly produces, because it was through him that I even discovered 9/11 Truth. Believe it or not, I never heard anything about it on Democracy Now!, which I am devoted to. But I just want to say, Joe Friendly is over there. Thank you so much for your airing of Phase 2 for Truth, 9/11 Truth. My question is, I am very concerned looking forward, and Carolyn being here, I got thinking in the future. I'm concerned, does it matter who wins the election? And I have to say that, if Kerry wins, it might only just diffuse the frustration and anxiety that we're feeling. But on the other hand, it could help him and aid and abet him to continue the agenda for the next 4 years unattended. So it's all very curious and dubious. And I thank you very much for being there, Cynthia. My question is, can we, as an action, a national action, not pay our taxes? Take our money back. And can that be a way of expressing and standing and saying we are not going to pay taxes this year?
Well, can I answer that? I will tell you that Catherine Fitz has been looking into that for quite a while, trying to figure a way what the model is there. But I can tell you that my opinion is that you can do more by taking your money out of the big money center banks. Put your money in local credit unions, community banks, where you know what they're doing with your money and it's going into your neighborhoods. Stop subscribing and paying money to the media who do not give you the truth.
Vote with your dollar.
Support media by donations, buying books, getting subscriptions to the people who tell you the truth. Vote with your time and your intention, your prayers, and your money. And I personally think that will make a bigger difference than who you vote for as President of the United States in November.
Let me just add that there is one congressional race in Georgia where the votes and the financial support do matter. So please.
Well, just a quick response is that I think we've been told since 2000 that they don't allow elections here in the United States to come down to the vote when they matter. I think the other thing that might be more effective than trying to get a segment of the population to stop paying taxes and take the risk of that would be instead to demand that we finally have taxation with representation by having the last page of our tax form be a direct allocation of the tax we spend.
Thank you, John. Yes, next question.
Thank you. I'd like to know if the panel has any thoughts about Al Jazeera. I recently saw the movie Control Room and how Al Jazeera is in the same bank of the main press as NBC and CNN and all this. And these Osama bin Laden mysterious warnings and tapes against the United States all appear on Al Jazeera, and we're all supposed to go, woo, because it's been revealed to us Do you have any thoughts on that?
My personal belief is that Al Jazeera has been compromised since September 12th, 2001.
Do you think Al Jazeera is financed by the United States?
My educated opinion, yes. Can I offer you concrete proof? No. But do they have to appear like they are anti-U.S. and they give an ear to the Islamic fundamentalist cause and they shed light on all the U.S. foreign policy atrocities? They have to do that to maintain their legitimacy somewhat.
Right.
But I think in the end they won't ask the tough questions.
I heard it discussed
pick
that was the put sales of the American Airlines and United Airlines stocks. I want to know where that money went. Has it been followed to the end, and who's involved in it?
Nick, perhaps you can just quickly say where the money went.
Well, this is a huge story because everyone has heard to an extent about the put options, and they seem to be a fairly small transaction that the Keene Commission was able to dismiss in a fairly quick way in a footnote, even though the story stinks. But what people seem to have simply forgotten is that in the days right after September 11th, you had the investigators of financial centers all around the world come out and say very clearly, we've seen extremely suspicious trading, and this happened in Frankfurt, in Japan, in London, where it was traced to a small airline that has never yet been identified. In the United States, it was the San Francisco as well as the Chicago exchanges. It happened at the Tokyo exchange. There were stories from Singapore. This seems to have happened all around the world. All the investigators said at once, there is something extremely suspicious here that we're going to pursue all the way back to its source, and we're probably going to find somebody connected to the attacks, whoever came out with that tip. And then suddenly, about a week later, they all decided to shut up. The most interesting fact, I think, in the United States is that the put options were placed through the Brown Bank, which in turn was previously run by the number three man in the CIA, and the CEO of Brown Bank resigned on September 12th, very suddenly.
Thank you.
So you got a sudden case.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney.
Thank you.
Is there any solid evidence, I guess for Mr. Judge, is there any solid evidence that any of the supposed hijackers were trained at U.S. run or related schools? The two references which I saw to this were a tiny, probably two-paragraph squib article in the Times about 10 days after 9/11 and in WBAI from Ralph Schoenman and Maya Schoen years later.
Thank you. Short answer and a reference to a reference.
I would say is not solid proof. There are press reports suggesting that some of them were trained here at U.S. military facilities and other ties that they have to U.S. military, and people around the suspect circle that were used as double agents had ties to U.S. militaries. But
any more specific references, or I don't recall who was
no.
part of the reports. What?
I mean, Hopsicker mentions it in his book, and you can find it different places. I don't have the sites off the top of my head for it.
Okay. Thank you. Next question.
In April of this year, the U.S. Attorney, the head of the FBI, Drug Enforcement Administration, and the head of the CIA all said that lack of staff played an important role in why they were not able to intercept the attacks on 9/11. A year ago, my family filed a federal lawsuit, and we charged the FBI, New York City, New York State, with conducting politically motivated and racially motivated investigations. And I believe that dovetails into what is affecting what took place on September 11th. When they were using their staff to conduct these illegal investigations, they should have been investigating the 9/11 terrorist. And I have a copy of my complaint. I was hoping it was possible for you to review that and look at what parts of that complaint dovetails with the 9/11 attacks.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Hanson Jones.
And you'll deliver that to?
I have a copy of my complaint and a few other documents. Needless to say, there are a tremendous number of documents that are involved.
Well, you can see me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also have documents I'd like to place in the hands of Representative McKinley or whoever else would like them, specifically related to one of the key figures that's been identified in the whole charities network issue, Mr. Alamoudi. I've followed the arrest. It goes way back. And the Justice Department, in handing down its indictment, has chosen to totally ignore the evidence that I will deliver to you from the Customs Service and from evidence delivered in testimony to the Judiciary Committee that proves that he's an Al-Qaeda and Hamas leader. He's been in this country for 20 years and high up in the government and directly related to Norquist. And I think that this is an issue that if the press got it, even if we can't get, the Justice Department to move on this, he's liable to be deported before they act, before he can speak, before anyone can speak, and then we'll never hear anything. But I think that this issue, if it could be brought out into the press, would blow Bush's cover
Directly related to Grover Norquist?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Beautiful.
I will give you what I've done, and I would like to have... My idea was to send this to several congresspeople and also to have perhaps some of the 9/11 families join in on this petition to the government saying, what's going on here? Why does he have minor charges instead of we have a big fish here? And he's been, officially sponsored by the various governments, and it's all connected to Muslim Brotherhood stuff.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll give you this.
Yeah.
Yes,
Hello.
we're trying to accommodate everybody, so please don't anybody else get in line.
Now, based on what we now know, or should I say what I found out today about Keene, is there a way that we can impeach him in the 9/11? I mean, especially if he had his part in the $24 million with this PTAC.
Impeach who? I'm sorry, can you speak?
No.
Kane, Tom Kane.
As well as Bush, as Cheney.
The Keene Commission is I believe, congressionally appointed, but it's not the type of body where you impeach. They just expire and go
Even
away.
if he was head of it? And a lot of people
I'm
know
not
about
aware
the
that there's any way, unless there were a conscious accessory after the fact kind of thing, if you could show that somebody was actively trying to hide information, but who are they hiding it from? There's no government investigation. If they were hiding it from an attorney general or from a district attorney who had subpoenaed them, that would be a crime. But hiding it generally from the American people, I'm not sure that that's actually a crime.
I'm sorry, we can't do any more follow-ups. Please,
Yes,
I'm trying to accommodate.
Hi, I'm Rubina Niaz with Not in Our Name, and I have a concern and a question. Knowing the U.S. government's, history and being notorious with supporting dictators around the world and then pulling the rug from under their feet, is Pakistan one of those countries? That's what I'm concerned about as a Pakistani American. But as I listen to everybody speak today and I'm connecting the dots, I'm struggling with one thing. If the Saudis are involved in this master plan and Pakistanis and everybody, how does the demonization of Islam and the attack on Muslims make sense? And how does it fit into this master plan? So I don't know who wants to answer that.
I could try to take that. There's two very important things, and I'm going to make this short. There's a huge difference between the citizens of Saudi Arabia and the Saudi regime. There's a huge difference between Musharraf's regime and the ISI and the average Pakistani on the street. And there's a huge difference between authentic piety and political aggression in the guise of religiosity. So demonizing Islam just sort of victimizes those people that can't tell the difference between the Saudi regime and the average Saudi on the street. So to create mass hysteria, it makes all the sense to demonize Islam, to create a culture of fear and insecurity. And yes, we want you to protect our borders and our skies, so here's all the money and siphon it off to security. Yeah. And yes, go ahead, Cynthia. Good.
And an identifiable enemy. Thank you. Next.
Quick question about expert confirmation on a couple of theories on Flight 77, and I apologize if you covered it earlier today. One is the structural engineer confirmation of the theory of the flight into the Pentagon, and second is expert testimony regarding the alleged telephone call made by Barbara Olson from Flight 77 that supposedly couldn't have taken place because the phones can't accept credit cards, and I see compelling. Oh, sorry.
There's two questions you have. One is the Pentagon.
Right. Is there structural engineering evidence from a structural engineer as opposed to people creating compelling arguments, which seem to make sense, but I, as a structural engineer, that confirmed the theory that it couldn't have been a 757, and likewise the phone call that couldn't have been made, other than people speculating, do we know that somebody who's familiar with how the phones worked on that flight said that couldn't have happened? And where would I find this information?
Nick?
I'm afraid that with that we're getting into a topic that would literally require another half hour.
Just short
and this
answers.
form of physical evidence is being covered at the other event on Saturday, so I'd recommend that you go there. This is a big conflict point, too, among the researchers, so I would recommend...
So you're saying there's no consensus what happened to the Pentagon?
Not absolutely.
Is there any consensus about the ability of the cell phone?
No, I wouldn't say among researchers that there's a consensus on the cell phone calls, although there are very strong opinions on both sides.
Thank you.
Next. My name is Lori. I'm from Boston, and I worked for Delta Airlines. In a variety of things that I was looking into, I just have to add that in 1998, AT&T bought the adult network system called the Hot Network. I was looking for someone there, and the name John R. Smart came up. It's a bogus name. It's a fictitious name. But oddly enough, there was a hyperlink to something called Schema DC, registered to dublincore.org, dated July 2nd, 1999. Dublincore.org is owned by a man named George Buzash, B-U-Z-A-S-H. In finding all the fiction and fictitious names and fictitious business entities of George Connolly on Bush Boulevard, or George Bush on Ehrlich Road down in Florida, or a variety of things, our technology has taken over. And there was definitely a schema DC in the year 2000, and I don't know if it'll happen again in 2004. Another thing that I found in terms of chat rooms.
Sorry, we need a question, please.
Well, I was just offering information for the people to know. In terms of chat rooms, there was a geocities.com/pentagon/bunker/9669 with a variety of other information that I have regarding child pornography and Operations Snowball, Landslide, and a variety of things. Aside from drug money and international money laundering, child pornography is definitely millions of dollars that are funding this administration.
Thank you. Thank you. Question, last question.
Yes. I had recently heard on WBAI that there was a Russian woman reporter who wanted to report the truth about what happened recently in Chechnya with the hostage crisis. And she went on an airplane. She was given some tea to drink, and she dropped dead, and she was poisoned. Now, it seems to be like this is the third time that all these terrorist attacks seem to happen whenever Bush or the Republicans go somewhere, and there's going to be a large protest, and they want the protesters to shut up. It seems, when Bush went to England, and there was going to be a large protest, it was the day after in which there were some terrorist attacks in Turkey. It was as though to say maybe the CIA or somebody sets these terrorist attacks up just to make the protesters shut up. And then on March 11th, again, Bush was going to go, and I believe he was going to come here over to New York and pay his respects to 9/11 victims, and there were various protesters, including myself, who wanted to say the Bush regime engineered 9/11, and on that day you had a terrorist attack in Spain. And then recently the Republican National Congress comes here to New York, and then the day after you have all these terrorist attacks. Do these terrorist attacks ever, the timing of all of these terrorist attacks ever have you people think about what is going on? Or is it possible that the CIA, the Mossad, Pakistani intelligence can continue to construct and organize these terrorist attacks just to make, just to silence any voices of dissent and keep us all in a state of fear and war for empire and resources?
The question, I guess, John, is that do you think there's a concert? These attacks can be made in concert and timing, and are these really one criminal operation with an agenda?
I think it has to be looked at. I don't think that we have more than a general suspicions of it. But I was tracking from the 1970s on a shift at the Defense Department in their planning and RAND Corporation studies that related to terrorism and counterterrorism as sort of the new rubric under which the military would operate once the enemy of the Soviet Union went away. And there is a body of evidence in Europe about what's called strategy of tension, which are plots created by the intelligence structures to have terrorist actions happen and then to blame them falsely on certain elements of society so that they can go against them and also increase the level of repression. So I think it's a legitimate query, but I think we haven't got a body of evidence quite yet.